Welcome to The Week Ahead, a podcast by SBM Intelligence. I'm your host, Veronica Pana Igube. Every Saturday, we explore stories that are shaping the African continent. Valentine Day has become a major spending event in the country, with gifts, dining, and entertainment driving customer activities. Despite economic challenges, such as rising inflation, the celebration continues to see growing participation and expenditure. We conducted a survey that showed customer spending is on the rise, with a third of respondents planning to spend between 51,000 naira to 100,000 naira. Traditional gifts remain popular, but experimental gifts are also in demand. How did businesses that adapt to evolving preferences position to benefit from this growing market? President Bola Tinubu has requested the National Assembly to increase the 2025 budget by 4.5 trillion naira, raising it from 49.7 trillion to 54.2 trillion. The increase attributed to the additional revenue from the FIRS, 1.4 trillion, NCS 1.2 trillion, and other agencies 1.8 trillion, aims to address Nigeria's critical challenge. Will this budget increase efficiently address the nation's pressing issues, or will it lead to further fiscal strain? President John Mahama has instructed the finance minister to address a 156 million health sector funding shortage caused by the suspension of the USAID assistance. The funding gap threatens critical health services such as maternity health, HIV, stroke, AIDS, and family planning in Ghana's northern country. Can Ghana find sustainable solutions to bridge these funding gaps? Or will vulnerable populations bear the brunt of the shortfall? Joining us for insight is Bumi Bailey, the head of research at SBM Intelligence. Welcome, Bumi, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Veronica, and
Happy Valentine's Day to you as well. Let's start with the SBM Valentine report. Just give us a breakdown on how the report came about, the findings of the report, and how did businesses that adapt to evolving preferences position itself to benefit from this growing market?
Okay. Thank you for having me again, Veronica. So what we actually did was we wanted to actually find out Nigerians' perception to this year. We know that the rise in inflation is actually affecting the many pockets of many Nigerians. So we actually wanted to gauge their view, whether they're going to spend more this year or spend less. So it was actually interesting to actually find that more people are actually planning to actually celebrate, actually spend more this year. So let me start by going to the report, which is actually titled Love in the Air. I mean, how Nigerian consumers are actually driving Valentine's Day growth. So our report surveyed a small sample size, between the ages of 18 and 65 years old across the three major cities in Nigeria. That's Lagos, Port Harcourt, and Abuja. And the people that we surveyed, I think about 44% were married, 42% are in a relationship, and 20% yes, a small proportion are single. And what we discovered is that out of that sample size, almost 86% said that they were actually going to celebrate, right? Day compared to about 62%, 62.7% that said that they celebrated last year. So you can actually see that growth. And then when we actually wanted to gauge their perception, okay, how much are you actually going to spend? Well, interesting to find that up to spend between 51,000 and 100,000. And this is actually higher compared to last year, where these respondents said that they actually spent between 10,000 and 51,000. And that 25% or quarter of the sample size said that they were going to spend between 10,000 and 50,000. And also on the high side, which we actually call the luxury aspect. So interesting to see that 5% that they were going to spend 500 items and experiences compared to about 1.59% last year. Growing that the participation that people actually want to, spend more and take part of this Valentine celebration. And I would attribute that a major driver to that, I would say, is also inflation, because it has actually increased the cost of many items. But I would also say the retailers are the ones actually driving this growing trend, because if you go on social media, right, on Instagram, for example, a lot of these online vendors displays their purchases, but what they actually displays are combo deals. When I talk about combo deals or packages, more or less like smaller packages that have like 3 and 4 items, like maybe flour, chocolate. So that is actually what is driving the growth in Valentine celebration and spending, because people are actually seeing these combo deals as value for their money, knowing that they're on a tight budget. I mean, I would say earlier that inflation is at record high levels. I mean, last year we rose to about 3.2% from an average of about 24.9%. So apart from that, another finding that we also discovered was that when we asked them or gauge their own view on the items we're going to spend, it's still on, food, jewelries, wristwatches, wigs and roses, the typical stuff, right? And other people also said, okay, fine. On the places they actually want to spend their Valentine Day, they said they want to go to restaurants, cinemas, and domestic vacations. That's actually states that is traveling within Nigeria. And when we ask them about, okay, what is actually driving or your more or less like influencing your spending, your spending, the need for you to spend more this Valentine, they said that it was more or less from their personal sentiments and more like social media. So it wasn't because of societal pressure or not on why they need to, spend more this Valentine. And back to the question that you asked me on how businesses can actually leverage this opportunity, because this is actually an opportunity, right? So one thing I would actually recommend is that Valentine Day is a special occasion for e-commerce sales globally. I mean, we can't really quantify the value of Valentine sales bring annually in Nigeria, but it's actually run to billions of naira. So I would actually recommend 3 things. The first one I would actually recommend is that they should actually, enhance the shopping experience for consumers, right? And when you do that, you would have to, in a way, optimize your online platforms. When I mean optimize your online platforms, like improve all your user interface, right? Ensure secure payment channels, and also offer reliable delivery services. And apart from that, I would also suggest that they should also do target campaigns and promotion for specific demographics. I'm talking about specific demographics. I'm actually talking about more or less like different incomes or the classes in the economy, from lower to the middle, to the upper end of the family. I mean, they can do something like student-friendly deals, family packages, and actually luxury experiences. And also, the retailers on the side can also offer their discounts to early birds that actually make purchases on time, and they can also actually offer loyal packages to their loyal customers. That would actually improve the loyalty, or more or less drive more sales. And lastly, I would also suggest that they should move away from the traditional gifts. When I mean traditional gifts, like roses, maybe wristwatches, wristwatches, just the normal typical gifting that we always see around. Like, because right now our survey actually shows that people want beyond the traditional gift. They actually want to have more or less like experience-based gifting. And the one example I can see that they could actually venture into or do is like maybe they can do a spa, right, for maybe a day, and then the spa can actually also include it can include like maybe a dinner for two. That is where the combo comes in, right? You have the spa and then you have the dinner for two. And another thing I would actually suggest is, like I said, people actually want to travel within the state as an option to enjoy their Valentine celebration. They could actually now do maybe a special resort within Nigeria, right? And they can actually put in a do a photo shoot at affordable prices. So if all these recommendations are implemented, it will Valentine, because Valentine's Day is an annual thing, it's not, I would not see it as something that would have a long-time impact in terms of sales. It would be like a short-term impact. But those you have money to invest, and then you also have money to expand. And when you have capital, you also have revenue. And what I mean by revenue, that's the expansion team also comes in, and then you can also increase staff. Like we all know, the wholesale and retail trade sector is the second most job creating sector after agriculture. So if retailers, and online vendors implement these recommendations, would actually see an increase and in an increase in sales, which would actually have an impact across the different sectors of the economy.
Really, really interesting stuff. I think that all our listeners, to ensure that they go to the SBM website and read up our report on Valentine. You don't want to miss it with all the juicy information that it has there. Let's move over to our president. So our president requested that the National Assembly increase the 2025 budget. Now, will this budget increase effectively address the nation's pressing issues, or do you think it would lead to further fiscal strain in the country? That fiscal strain.
Okay, so I think I saw in the news yesterday that it's already been passed, right? And I think 700 million was added to the budget. So now you have around 500 and no, you have about 54, I think 54.99 trillion, which is more than, well, I would say almost, yes, I would say it is half of last year's budget, I think, which was around 32 trillion naira. So I would go back to the question about the request before it was actually passed, right? So when I heard the news, what I thought of was that the request for supplementary budgetary funds, 2 months into the year, for me, it actually cast a doubt on the credibility of the annual budgeting processes. I mean, I recall that in the previous budget cycles, I mean, November or December was when you passed the budget, but in February, you actually just passed the budget, which actually now affects the timing or the period you actually pass the budget. So although the Nigerian budget process actually seems to have, established procedures, but questions linger around the level of scrutiny the budget, actually receives. I mean, like I earlier said, the budget is more than roughly 50% of the previous budget, which actually presents both an opportunity and a risk. I mean, the government now has access to greater funds following significant fiscal reforms, notably subsidy removal. However, the National Assembly oversight of how these funds are allocated and spent appears limited. I mean, with Nigeria's budget deficit, I mean, roughly around 13 trillion, there are concerns that it would actually go further if projected revenues, right, that they have estimated would fall. Recall that the 2025 budget oil benchmark is $75 per barrel, and it's already been challenged by the best crude recent drip of about $74.4 per barrel. So a potential increase in US oil production driven by then went President Trump made this speech in his inauguration, baby drill energy policy could actually, depress prices and actually affect Nigeria's revenue, because during the previous administration of Trump, he was really focused on actually increasing or pumping US oil production, and that is what we're going to see now. So all that moves around renewable energy might actually stop, because the president now will focus on improving and increasing US oil crude oil production. And if that happens, he will actually find a way to actually create more or less like attract other countries to come and buy the US oil. So, and for Nigeria, this is how I said that it's actually going to impact the revenue for Nigeria, because we already set a target of $75 per barrel. And with the way things are, right, and Trump coming in and his policies, we might actually see below that. And if the oil benchmark is actually below 75 barrel, like it will have an impact on Nigeria's revenue. And when there's an impact on Nigeria revenue, it would actually make us to borrow more, raising the concern about debt sustainability. So beyond revenue, the absence of robust accountability framework fuels worries about fund misallocation. So I would recommend efficient management, which would enable investment in critical sectors like education, healthcare, and infrastructure, which could potentially improve the lives of many Nigerians, which have been thrown into poverty within the last 1 year.
Hopefully, like you said, we will see the government, implement and focus on sectors that would bring positive change and economic development to the country. Let's move over to our final story. President John Mahama instructed the Finance Minister, Dr. Cassiel Otto Forson, to address the 156 million healthcare sector funding shortfall. What do you think? Can Ghana find sustainable solutions to bridge these funding gaps, or will vulnerable population bear the brunt of the shortfall? So we know that the US has suspended USAID assistance to a lot of African countries, and countries are trying to adjust. So this step is the step where the Ghana president is telling the minister to find other sustainable ways to address these issues. So what are your thoughts?
Okay, well, apart from Ghana, I think Nigeria has also, I read in the news that Nigeria is also trying to increase. I think the president ordered that they should set a separate budget. I can't remember the figure, but more countries are now trying to increase their health budgets, right? Which is actually a good one. So back to Ghana, USAID has actually been a key pillar for Ghana's health sector. I mean, last year, the amount that was actually disbursed from the US was roughly around $190 million, right? But this figure was actually lower to about 191 million in 2023. And from my analysis, is the lowest since maybe 2022, just a short period of time. So you could see that even before Trump had actually set this 90 days pulse, the allocation of funds to Ghana was actually reducing, but at a slow pace. And then when you look at last year's amount of roughly $190 million, I mean, out of the top 5 sectors, I mean, basic health, maternal and child health, family, and also HIV actually make up the top 5. Like a lot of funds are usually allocated to those sectors. And over the years, I mean, Ghana Health Service, I mean, the government that's responsible for health services in the country has actually made significant process in improving the health of Ghana. But there's still a lot of challenges, right, that needs to be addressed, such as you have the high rate of mortality, right, and also the presence of communicable diseases. I mean, Ghana is a population of, I think, roughly around 34 million people, right? And it's the second highly populated country in West Africa, right? That's after Nigeria. So back to what this funding or this withdrawal of the funding or support for Ghana would mean. So a withdrawal of this support could create a significant funding gap, that Ghana has been struggling to fill. Like I mentioned earlier, although funding to the sector has been increasing, it's still not enough to meet it's not been able to tackle or solve the many communicable diseases in that country. I mean, the country is already grappling with a substantial budget deficit, and the funding gap in the health sector poses a significant challenge to the universal health coverage and also, improving the health outcomes in the country. So to actually suggest or to recommend sustainable ways that are needed, to actually ensure long-term funding resources, and really not depend on US or any other international country for foreign aid, I would recommend that the government try to increase the health spending. And how they can do that is by prioritizing health as a key investment and allocate a greater share of their budgets to the health sector. And this can be achieved through tax collection, effective public financial management, and innovative financial financing mechanism. Apart from that, they could actually leverage on public-private partnership. I mean, they can engage the private sector in healthcare delivery, those companies or firms in the health sector, and financing that can help to give additional resource and expertise while also ensuring quality and affordability. So apart from that, they can actually also leverage technology to actually help to improve efficiency and reduce costs and expand access to healthcare services, making the health system more sustainable.
Thank you so much for that brilliant insight. That concludes today's episode. Thank you, Bumi, for being with us and sharing your thoughtful insight that made this conversation more engaging.
Thank you so much for having me.
To all our listeners, happy Valentine's Day. I'm sure you had fun and you had a fruitful engagement with your family and friends. To all our listeners, we want to say this podcast is powered by SBM Intelligence. You can access our podcast by searching for SBM Intelligence anywhere you find podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe if you're yet to. Like, share, and drop your comments. For deeper insights into our work, visit our website at sblintel.com. Remember to connect with us on all our social media platforms. You can find us on X, Facebook, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn at SBM Intelligence. Thank you for tuning in to the week ahead. Join us next Saturday for more insights shaping the African continent.